Hello and welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are having an amazing first day of spring. This week we are doing some baking, sewing, and preparing for the summer garden around here. Something I share a lot about on this channel is the learning curve of becoming a homemaker. So I have shared this before. I am a very young homemaker. I'm very new to being the keeper of the home as my role. I'm less than a year in, I think, of this being sort of like my job in our family. And so I use this space to sort of share what I am learning about being the keeper of the home. And so one of those things is making sourdough bread. You will not hear me claim that I have the most perfect sourdough bread routine or that I make sure that we have 2 fresh loaves of sourdough bread every week. This is still something that I am learning how to do, and something that I've learned about learning, which is a weird thing to say, something that I've learned through the process of trying to gain a lot of these more traditional skills is that they do get easier the more often you do them. And that sounds silly because you're like, duh. But part of me is like, okay, but it's still just making bread. But there's the part where you don't have to Google how to use a food scale and like all of that kind of stuff. I've learned this with sewing too, is that you can just start to make bias tape rather than having to Google how to do all the steps. So learning how to make sourdough bread has been a little bit of a process for me, and also just getting into the bread routine. It's still one of those things where I definitely am like, okay, I'm going to make bread today. It doesn't come second nature. I want to say that to make you feel like it's okay if it doesn't come second nature to you either, but it is something that I really enjoy and I'm having fun learning about. So this week I decided to do a double batch. I figured if I was going to be stretching and folding, I might as well make a chocolate loaf of sourdough bread as well as 2 regular loaves of sourdough bread. As for the recipes I am following for these loaves of bread, I pretty much exclusively follow my sister Lisa from Farmhouse on Boone's sourdough recipes. She has a way of making sourdough not overcomplicated, and I am not the type of person that wants to know all of the details before I do something. I wouldn't consider myself a researcher. And so she has a way of really simplifying the process of sourdough. And that is just a way that really clicked with me and made it easy for me to start doing this. The best day of late winter and early spring, in my opinion, is whenever you get to plan your garden and start seeds. So I really have loved the learning process of gardening. Like I said, we talk a lot about learning on this channel. I have loved the learning process of gardening. This will be my 4th year having a garden, and I have learned pretty substantial lessons every single year so far. So this year, the lesson I am taking from last year is that as not homesteady, homekeeper-y of me as this is, I don't like to grow food. So whenever I placed my seed order this year, I decided that we go to the farmer's market almost every week. We have tons of fresh, organically grown food, very, very readily available to us. And that is just something that last year I just did not care about. I realized I only care about the flowers. And so I decided this year I was only growing flowers. I don't know if that's wrong of me, but that's what I'm doing this year. So you will see me plant a couple of peppers and radishes, and that is because my husband enjoys growing peppers, and so I started those for him. But outside of that, we're basically growing nothing outside of flowers and herbs. Now, technically herbs are a food, of course, but they add so much to flower arrangements and they are really easy and I do enjoy growing them. And with our pizza oven, I love having very, very fresh basil for summer pizzas. So that is what we are growing this year. Lots of flowers, some of my old tried and true varieties, and some new varieties that I'm really excited about. I'm anxious to see how they take off. Herbs and a couple of pepper plants in grow bags is our plan. I do want to walk you guys through my seed starting process. So most of what I learned is from Florette, who has this beautiful flower farm in Washington, and she has a seed starting mini course that's free. And so I took that the first year I started gardening and basically just followed it to the letter. It is actually quite a simple setup. We just use these 72 cell seed starting trays that have the germination lid, which is really important, heat mats in order to keep the plants warm, and then we put them on a shelf dedicated for seed starting so that I don't have to clear a shelf every year. And then we just got these LED shop lights that we hang over the seeds from the shelf, and you can start thousands of seeds this way. As far as I have learned, I think this is the easiest, cheapest, and most straightforward way to get started with starting seeds inside. Later in the evening, once my sourdough had done its bulk ferment, it was time to take them and divide them. Now, something I had learned from my sister, because I told her my loaves of bread weren't getting very fluffy, she said, you're going to have to shape them well before you put them in the bantam basket. So again, another thing I learned and I'm learning about sourdough is that the shaping step before you put them in the bantam baskets to go in the fridge overnight is really important. And I have to say, this is the first time I did it and they turned out probably some of the better sourdough loaves I've ever made. So I'm very, very happy with that. You might notice I don't have official Banneton baskets or enough to make my loaves. I just throw a tea towel in any bowl and then put them in the fridge overnight. And that seems to work okay for me. After I had put my sourdough bread in the fridge, I sort of realized that we had a completely unspoken for Saturday night. So I decided that it was time to tackle a sewing project that I have been wanting to do for a very long time. We have this window above our sink that had no curtain, and that's honestly just one, not very cute for it to be an uncurtained window, but two, kind of annoying. I wanted to be able to open and close that window. So I decided to take some fabric that I had thrifted a long time ago, and it's really not good fabric for anything other than a curtain or like something in the home. And so I was like, I'm gonna just make a curtain tonight. When it comes to projects as simple and inconsequential as this one, I definitely take a few more shortcuts. So I'm not going to measure perfectly. I'm not going to worry about getting every single detail right the way I probably would if I was making a garment, because I want it to fit perfectly and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to a curtain that's just going to hang in my kitchen with thrifted fabric that was really, really cheap, I'm going to take a lot more liberties with the construction of it. So I decided that I wanted to do a tab top curtain. I have made one of these before on this channel in my sewing room, and it's a really similar process this time. All that you have to do to make a tab top curtain is make two big rectangles for like the bulk of the curtain and hem them on all the sides except for the top side. And then you can just take the remaining fabric. Now on this project, I had this was all the fabric I had left was to make the tabs. And I cut them into rectangles. I believe I did 9 inches by 3 inches by 4 inches. I can't quite remember, but you just cut them into rectangles and then press them down, sew them right sides together, and then turn the tabs out. And these become your tabs. Once I have the tabs turned out, I press the seam towards the middle so that it can be completely hidden on the curtain. This is just an extra step that's really easy, and I think it makes my job easier later because I have the tabs perfectly made so that I'm not trying to fiddle with them while I'm sewing. And then I don't even measure the distance between. I just kind of place them and make sure they're good enough. And then something that tripped me up the first time I made these is that you actually sew the tabs down first. So you take it just like I had it there and you run a seam over it and sew it down, and then you flip the tabs back up so that they're facing the top and you can hang them from the tabs. Once I got both panels sewed up, I took the time to clip all the hanging threads so that they would look nice and clean. And then the next morning I was able to hang up my curtain, and it has brought me so much joy ever since it's been there. It's been so nice to kind of shut that window down in the evening time and open it up in the morning. And I've just absolutely loved the details added to my kitchen. Just 2 days after sowing seeds, we had a lot of germination. So I just wanted to show you the progress of that before we head upstairs to bake the bread that I had proofed in the fridge overnight. Like many traditional homemaking skills, I have learned that baking fresh bread for your family is so rewarding, and to make the scoring pattern and to watch the loaves come together, and even just learning the amount of time that it takes to get a fresh loaf of sourdough bread is really important and really valuable to your family and to me. So this, like I said earlier in the video, is one of my better sourdough loaves that I have ever made. I edited out the part where I was like, oh my gosh, like freaking out because it was so crusty on the inside and so it rose so well. So I was really, really excited about that. So this particular batch of bread was extra rewarding because it did go over so well. It doesn't always go that way, but this time I'm pretty proud of it. As always, I hope this video was inspiring and peaceful for you. Thank you so much for joining us for another week of Our Sweet Sunny Days.